The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly as the civilian transport Harmony's Dream drifted through the neutral corridor between human and alien territories. 8-year-old Jiho Park pressed his small face against the cold viewport, his breath creating small clouds of fog on the glass as he watched distant stars twinkle like scattered diamonds against the cosmic void. "Look, Appa!" Jiho exclaimed, pointing at a passing asteroid with excitement dancing in his dark eyes. "It looks like a space whale swimming through the stars." His father, Dr. Sungmin Park, looked up from his data tablet and smiled warmly at his son's endless imagination. The boy always found wonder in the simplest things, even during their long journey through the darkness of space. Sungmin's wife, Dr. Hyejin Park, sat beside him reviewing research files for their upcoming assignment. Both were xenobiologists, experts in studying alien life forms, and they were part of humanity's first scientific expedition to establish a research station on the neutral world of Kepler 438b. "Maybe it is a space whale, son," Sungmin said softly, moving to sit beside Jiho at the viewport. "In this big universe, anything is possible." The transport ship was not large or impressive. It carried only 30 passengers, mostly scientists and their families, along with basic supplies for the new research station. The ship's hull was painted white with blue stripes, and the words Earth Scientific Mission were written in several languages, including the universal galactic script that all species could read. Humanity had only been part of the Galactic Council for 3 years now. They were the newest members, and most other species still saw them as weak and unimportant. The elder races ruled the galaxy with ancient wisdom and powerful technology. The crystalline Zephyrians looked like living glass sculptures and could live for thousands of years. The hive-minded Korthak moved as one giant mind spread across billions of bodies. The ancient Valdari had existed since before most stars were born. To these old and powerful species, humans were like children playing with simple toys. Earth's technology seemed basic compared to ships that could cross the galaxy in days or weapons that could destroy entire solar systems. Humans were tolerated more than respected, allowed to exist in their small corner of space as long as they caused no trouble. Captain So-young Kim sat on the bridge of the Harmony's Dream, checking navigation charts and monitoring the ship's simple systems. She was an experienced pilot who had flown cargo ships between Earth and Mars for many years before taking this assignment. The pay was good and the mission was peaceful. What could go wrong on a simple transport run through neutral space? "We're approaching the halfway point to Kepler 438b, she announced over the intercom, her voice echoing through the ship's corridors. "All passengers please remain seated for routine navigation adjustments. We should arrive at our destination in approximately 4 days." The passengers settled back into their seats as the ship made small course corrections. Children played with electronic games while adults read books or worked on their research. The journey was boring but safe, exactly as it should be for a civilian transport carrying families. But far away, hidden in the shadows of a nearby moon, other eyes were watching. Admiral Thakmore of the Korthak War Fleet observed the small human transport through his ship's powerful sensors. His insect-like compound eyes reflected the light from his command screens as he studied the defenseless vessel. To his alien mind, humans were nothing more than soft, emotional creatures who had somehow managed to build simple spacecraft. The Korthak were very different from humans. They looked like giant armored beetles with hard shells covering their bodies and sharp claws instead of hands. But their most important feature was invisible. They shared one giant mind that connected every member of their species. When one Korthak learned something, they all knew it instantly. When one felt pain, they all suffered together. This shared consciousness made them powerful warriors, but it also made them cruel. They could not understand why other species cared about individuals when only the group mattered. To them, the death of one creature meant nothing if it helped the whole species survive. "Soft creatures," Thakmore clicked to his subordinates, the sound translated by computers into words other species could understand. "Let us see how they respond to true power." His war fleet consisted of 6 massive ships, each one larger than the entire human transport. They were built for battle, with thick armor plating and weapons designed to crack the surfaces of planets. Against the small civilian ship, they were like wolves surrounding a lost lamb. The Korthak had been looking for a way to test humanity's resolve. The humans claimed to be peaceful, but every species said that until they were pushed too far. Thakmore wanted to know what would happen when humans faced real danger. Would they fight back, or would they simply surrender like the weak creatures they appeared to be? The timing was perfect. The human ship was in neutral space, far from any help. There were no other vessels nearby, and no military escorts to protect the civilians. It would be easy to intercept them and see how humans reacted to a show of force. Inside the Harmony's Dream, Jiho continued to watch the stars, completely unaware that death was approaching through the darkness. His parents reviewed their research, excited about the discoveries they would make on the new world. Captain Kim checked her instruments, satisfied that everything was working properly. None of them knew that in just a few hours, everything would change. The peaceful journey would become a nightmare, and a small boy's terrified cry would echo across the galaxy, awakening something in humanity that would shake the very foundations of galactic civilization. The alarm systems on the Harmony's Dream began screaming as 6 massive dark shapes appeared from behind the nearby moon. Captain So-young Kim stared at her detection screens in horror as the HFY war vessels emerged from their hiding place like hungry wolves surrounding a lost sheep. Each alien ship was 10 times larger than the human transport. Their hulls were black as midnight and covered with sharp spikes and weapon ports. They looked like giant insects floating in space, ready to tear apart anything that came too close. The weapons on these ships were designed to break apart entire planets, not fight small civilian vessels. "This cannot be happening," Captain Kim whispered to herself as her hands shook over the communication controls. She had flown through space for 20 years and never encountered hostile aliens. Most species respected the neutral zones where civilians could travel safely. She pressed the communication button with trembling fingers. "This is Civilian Transport Harmony's Dream. We are in neutral space carrying scientific personnel and their families. Please state your intentions." The response came quickly through the ship's speakers. Admiral Thakmore's voice sounded like metal scraping against stone, even after the computers translated his clicking sounds into human words. "Humans, your presence here displeases us. You will prepare to be boarded immediately." Throughout the passenger section of the ship, people began to panic. Children started crying while their parents tried to comfort them. The scientists who had been so excited about their mission now faced their worst nightmare. They were defenseless civilians trapped in space with no way to escape. Dr. Sungmin Park pulled his wife Hyejin and son Jiho close to him as the ship shook from the approaching alien vessels. "Stay calm," he told his family, though his own voice was full of fear. "They probably just want to search our ship. This happens sometimes in space." But young Jiho had never seen anything like the dark, scary ships outside their windows. The alien vessels looked like giant monsters with glowing red eyes and sharp teeth. His small body trembled as he pressed against his father's chest, trying to hide from the terrible sight. "It's okay, son," Sungmin whispered, stroking his boy's black hair. "They just want to scare us. The Galactic Council has laws that protect civilians. They cannot hurt us without good reason." Suddenly, the entire transport shook violently as heavy metal objects crashed into the hull. The lights flickered and went out for several seconds before the emergency power came on. Through the thin walls, everyone could hear the sound of cutting tools slicing through the ship's outer skin. "They are boarding us," Captain Kim announced over the intercom, her voice barely steady. "All passengers must remain in their seats and follow any instructions given by the boarding party." The airlock doors burst open with a loud bang, and HFY soldiers poured into the passenger section like a dark flood. Each alien warrior stood over 7 feet tall and wore thick black armor that covered their insect-like bodies. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but everyone could see their glowing red eyes through the dark glass. The soldiers moved with perfect coordination as if they shared one mind. They pointed their strange weapons at the terrified humans while clicking to each other in their alien language. Their movements were quick and precise, like a swarm of giant ants working together. Jiho had never been so scared in his short life. The alien soldiers looked like the monsters from his worst nightmares. Their armor made harsh scraping sounds as they walked, and their weapons glowed with dangerous energy. The boy's small heart beat so fast he thought it might burst. In his terror, Jiho remembered something his father had taught him during the safety drills before their journey. If anything bad ever happened, there was a red emergency beacon hidden under his seat that would call for help. His father had shown him how to use it just in case. With shaking hands, the frightened boy reached under his seat and found the small red device. His fingers were so scared they could barely work the simple controls, but he managed to press the activation button. The beacon began sending out a distress signal that would travel across space to reach human colonies and Earth itself. Admiral Thakmore was still on his command ship when he received the report about the emergency signal. His alien mind, connected to all other HFY through their shared consciousness, immediately understood what had happened. A human child had activated a distress beacon. To the HFY hive mind, this was not the action of a scared little boy calling for help. In their twisted way of thinking, even a child's cry for assistance was an act of defiance against their authority. They saw it as a challenge that demanded punishment. The Admiral's compound eyes focused on the image of Jiho on his screen. The boy was small and obviously terrified, clinging to his parents while tears ran down his face. But Thakmor felt no mercy for the frightened child. In his cold alien logic, the boy had committed an act of war by calling for help. "Destroy them," he commanded his soldiers through their mental connection. "Let the humans know the price of resistance, even from their young." The Korthak soldiers inside the transport received their orders instantly. They raised their weapons toward the defenseless families, including the crying children who had done nothing wrong. Jiho's small voice came through the emergency beacon one last time as the transmission reached across the galaxy toward Earth. "Halmiani, I'm scared. Please help us." He was calling for his grandmother, using the Korean word that meant so much love and safety. Then the weapons fired and the signal went silent forever. The news traveled faster than light itself, carried by quantum communication networks that connected every human world. On Earth, people stopped what they were doing as emergency broadcasts interrupted their daily lives. On Mars colonies, workers put down their tools and stared at their screens in shock. In the outer settlements, families gathered around communication devices to hear the terrible news. Jiho Park was dead. The 8-year-old boy had been killed by alien soldiers along with his parents and 30 other innocent people aboard the Harmony's Dream. But it was not just the news of their deaths that shocked humanity. It was the recording of Jiho's final moments, his small voice calling for his grandmother as death approached. The recording had been automatically transmitted by the emergency beacon before the ship was destroyed. Every human who heard it felt something break inside their hearts. The boy's frightened voice, speaking in Korean to his Halmiani, touched something deep in the human soul that had never been awakened before. Admiral Minho Choi stood in the emergency meeting room of Earth's Defense Council, his old face looking like it was carved from gray stone. He had served in space for 40 years and had seen many terrible things, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. Behind him, on the large screen, Jiho's final transmission played over and over again. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Choi said in a quiet voice that somehow filled the entire room. "They killed a child. Our child." The room fell completely silent. Every person present could hear the pain in the Admiral's words. These were not just military officers and politicians anymore. They were parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles who understood that an innocent boy had died calling for help that never came. General Yun-Soo Lee activated the holographic display that showed all of humanity's military forces. The blue dots representing human warships looked very small compared to the red areas marking Korthak territory. "Sir, we have 43 warships available for immediate deployment. The Korthak Empire controls over 200 star systems with thousands of military vessels." Admiral Choi looked at the display for a long moment, then turned back to face the council. "Then we build more ships," he replied with steel in his voice. "And we make each one count for 10 of theirs." What happened next surprised everyone, including other alien species who had been watching the situation. The galaxy expected humans to file diplomatic protests and maybe impose economic sanctions. That was how civilized species were supposed to respond to such incidents. They would complain to the Galactic Council and eventually accept some small compensation for their losses. Instead, something extraordinary began to happen across all human worlds. The species that other aliens had always seen as weak and emotional suddenly transformed into something else entirely. Their emotions, which had been viewed as a weakness, became the fuel for the greatest war machine the galaxy had ever seen. Dr. Gina Yang had spent her entire career studying peaceful uses of advanced physics. She worked at Earth's Theoretical Physics Institute, developing new technologies to help humanity explore space and understand the universe. But when she heard Jiho's voice calling for help, something changed inside her brilliant mind. She abandoned all her peaceful research and began working 20 hours a day to turn her discoveries into weapons. Technologies that were meant to help people communicate across vast distances became tools for jamming enemy communications. Energy systems designed to power space stations were modified to create weapons that could slice through the strongest alien armor. Captain Taehyun Yoon commanded a cargo fleet that carried supplies between human colonies. His ships were built for hauling food, medicine, and construction materials, not for fighting wars. But after hearing about Jiho's death, he began converting his entire fleet into warships. The cargo holds that once carried grain and medical supplies were fitted with missile launchers. The communication arrays used for coordinating deliveries became advanced targeting systems. Within weeks, his peaceful merchant vessels had become deadly predators ready for battle. All across human space, similar transformations were taking place. Scientists abandoned their research to build better weapons. Factory workers changed their production lines from making consumer goods to creating military equipment. Even children too young to fight contributed by helping in factories and farms so adults could join the military. What the galaxy had never understood about humans was now becoming clear. Other species had always seen humanity's strong emotional bonds as a sign of weakness. They thought humans were too soft because they cared so much about their families and friends. But they had misunderstood everything. These emotional connections were not weakness, they were humanity's greatest source of strength. Every human who heard Jiho's voice felt the loss as if the boy had been their own child, their own brother, their own grandson. The pain united them in a way that the aliens had never experienced. The Galactic Council members watched in growing alarm as human battle fleets assembled with frightening speed and efficiency. The same species they had dismissed as harmless was now building the largest military force the galaxy had seen in centuries. And unlike other species who fought for territory or resources, humans were fighting for something much more powerful. They were fighting for love. Commander Junsik Han led the first strike against a Korthak outpost in the Vega system. His approach to warfare was unlike anything alien military analysts had ever studied. He was cold, calculated, and absolutely merciless in his tactics. There were no dramatic speeches or honorable challenges. There was only efficient, deadly precision. As human weapons tore through Korthak shields like they were made of paper, Commander Han whispered words that would become the battle cry of humanity's awakening, for Jiho Park. The age of human weakness was over, and the galaxy trembled. The sound of human engines became the most feared noise in Korthak space. Within 6 months of Jiho Park's death, every alien in their empire knew that when those particular engine signatures appeared on their sensors, death and destruction would follow. The deep, steady hum of human warships approaching was like hearing thunder before a deadly storm. Admiral J1 Park stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Vengeance, as it moved toward another Korthak military base. He was Jiho's uncle, the brother of Dr. Sungmin Park who had died with his son on that terrible day. The admiral carried his family's pain like a sword in his heart, and he used that pain to fuel his war against the aliens who had killed his nephew. Unlike other military commanders who fought with emotion and anger, Admiral Park conducted his campaign with the cold precision of a surgeon. Every attack was carefully planned. Every target was chosen for maximum effect. He did not waste ships or lives in pointless battles. Instead, he struck like a scalpel, cutting away the Korthak Empire piece by piece. The humans had discovered something that changed everything about their war with the aliens. The Korthak's greatest strength, their shared mind that connected every member of their species, could also become their greatest weakness. When one Korthak felt fear, that terror spread through their mental network to thousands of others. "Sir, we have captured the Korthak garrison," reported Commander Lee over the communication system. Admiral Park looked at the burning alien base on his screen. "Good. Capture them alive and bring them to the observation deck. Make them watch. Then release them." This was Admiral Park's most effective weapon against the Korthak. Instead of simply killing captured soldiers, human forces made them watch as their colonies and military bases were systematically destroyed. The aliens were forced to see their proud empire crumbling before their compound eyes. Then, instead of executing them, the humans set them free. The psychological effect was devastating. The released Korthak carried their terror and humiliation back through the hive mind to every other member of their species. The fear spread like a disease through their shared consciousness, paralyzing entire fleets and causing soldiers to surrender without fighting. Captain Unbai Cho commanded the human fleet that surrounded Korthak Prime, the homeworld where their species had originated millions of years ago. Her modified warships hung in orbit around the planet like dark angels of death, their weapons pointed at the surface where billions of aliens lived in growing terror. The ships in her fleet had once been civilian vessels, cargo haulers, passenger transports, and research ships. But human engineers had transformed them into instruments of war more effective than anything the galaxy had ever seen. They carried weapons that could crack planetary surfaces and shields that could deflect the most powerful alien attacks. "Admiral Park," Captain Cho reported through the quantum communication link, "Korthak Prime is completely surrounded. Their orbital defenses have been destroyed. We are ready to begin the final assault." But Admiral Park was in no hurry to end the war quickly. He wanted the Korthak to suffer as his nephew had suffered. He wanted them to feel helpless and afraid, just as Jiho had felt in his final moments. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council was in complete panic. The ancient alien races who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years suddenly found themselves facing a human military force they could not control or stop. They sent desperate diplomatic missions to Earth, begging the humans to negotiate. Ambassador Do-hyun Kim met with the alien delegates in a cold, sterile conference room on Earth's orbital station. The representatives of the Zephyrians, Valdari, and other species sat nervously as the human diplomat delivered humanity's final message. "You stood by and watched as they murdered our child," Ambassador Kim said in a voice that could freeze space itself. "For months you did nothing while they celebrated killing innocent civilians. Now you ask for mercy? Now you want to negotiate." The crystalline Zephyrian delegate tried to speak, her glass-like voice ringing with desperation. The Korthak acted without approval from the council. This was not sanctioned by Dash. "There will be no negotiation," Ambassador Kim cut her off with words like steel blades. "The Korthak Empire will surrender completely and unconditionally, or it will cease to exist. Every world, every ship, every soldier, all must surrender. That is our only offer." The ancient Valdari representative, whose species had existed since before most stars were born, found himself powerless before humanity's focused rage. His people had conquered galaxies and destroyed entire civilizations, but they had never encountered a species that could channel pure grief into such devastating military power. Back on Korthak Prime, Queen Thakvera sat in her royal chamber deep beneath the planet's surface. Through the hive mind, she could feel the death screams of her subjects as human forces destroyed Korthak colonies across the galaxy. Each destroyed world sent waves of agony through the shared consciousness, making her feel as if she were dying 1,000 deaths. The queen had lived for over 800 years and had never known fear like this. The humans fought with a cold efficiency that terrified her more than any enemy she had ever faced. They showed no mercy, accepted no surrender except complete capitulation, and seemed willing to exterminate her entire species to avenge one small child. Through her connection to the hive mind, she felt the terror of a Korthak soldier who had just watched humans destroy his home colony. The human commander had made him watch every building burn, every ship explode, every civilian evacuation center collapse. Then they had released him to carry that horror back to the collective consciousness. Queen Thakvera finally understood what her empire had unleashed when they killed Jiho Park. They had awakened something in humanity that would not stop until every Korthak was dead or surrendered. "We surrender," her message reached Admiral Park through quantum transmission. "Please. No more death. We surrender completely." The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if humanity's thirst for vengeance could finally be satisfied. The memorial stood in the exact spot where the Korthak Military Command Center had once towered over their homeworld. It was not grand or impressive, just a simple black stone with words carved in both Korean and the universal galactic language that all species could read. Jiho Park, age 8, never forgotten. Dr. Sungmin Park and Dr. Hyejin Park knelt before their son's memorial on this quiet morning, carefully placing fresh flowers at the base of the stone. The flowers had been grown in soil from Earth, brought across the galaxy so that something from Jiho's home could rest with his memory. Their hands touched gently as they arranged the white blooms, both parents finding comfort in this simple ritual they performed every month. Around them, the former Korthak homeworld had been completely transformed. Where military buildings once stood, there were now research centers and schools. The weapons factories had become laboratories where scientists from dozens of different species worked together to understand the universe. The planet that had once been the heart of a warlike empire was now a place of learning and cooperation. Young alien students walked past the memorial on their way to classes, many of them stopping to read the inscription or leave small tokens of respect. Korthak children whose parents had once served in the military that killed Jiho, now learned about peace and the importance of protecting the innocent. The irony was not lost on anyone. The boy's death had created exactly the kind of peaceful world he might have loved to explore. Far away, in the great chambers of the Galactic Council, the most powerful beings in the galaxy gathered for their weekly meeting. But the seating arrangement was very different now than it had been just 2 years ago. Where once the ancient Zephyrians and Valdari had occupied the seats of honor, humanity now sat in the central position of authority. Chairman Woojin Lee looked out at the assembled alien delegates with calm, quiet authority. He was not a military man like Admiral Park, but his words carried the weight of humanity's proven strength. Every species in the galaxy knew that behind his polite diplomatic language stood the most powerful military force they had ever encountered. "The child protection protocols are non-negotiable," Chairman Lee said in his measured voice as he addressed the gathering. "Any species that harms a young member of any race, human or alien, will face immediate and severe sanctions. This law applies to everyone everywhere in the galaxy." The crystalline Zephyrians nodded their glass-like heads in complete agreement. Their species had existed for millions of years, but they had learned to respect the new human order. The ancient Valdari, whose minds had processed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, understood the wisdom of this new law. Even the remaining Korthak delegates, now under human protection and rehabilitation, sat quietly and accepted the terms. This was not conquest in the traditional sense. Humanity had not invaded alien worlds to steal their resources or enslave their populations. Instead, they had used their overwhelming military superiority to create something unprecedented in galactic history, a government based on protecting the innocent rather than serving the powerful. In the human sectors of space, the changes were even more visible. Children of all species played safely in parks under Earth's warm yellow sun and on alien worlds with purple or green skies. They laughed and ran without fear, protected by invisible shields more powerful than any technology, the knowledge that humanity would never again allow any child to die unavenged. On the space station orbiting Kepler 438b, Admiral So-Young Kim watched through the observation deck as young children played in the recreation areas below. She had been promoted from captain after surviving the aftermath of the Harmony's Dream incident, and now she commanded the human defense fleet in this sector. Among the playing children were not only humans but also young Zephyrians whose crystal bodies sparkled in the artificial light, Valdari children whose ancient eyes held wisdom beyond their years, and even some young Korthak who had been born after the war ended. They played together without the fear and hatred that had once divided their species. "Admiral," her aide reported, "we have confirmation that Jiho Park Memorial Research Station has been officially opened on Kepler 438b. It's exactly where his transport was originally headed." Admiral Kim smiled softly as she watched a human boy about Jiho's age teaching an alien child how to play a game from Earth. "He finally made it to his destination," she said quietly. "Just not the way anyone expected." The research station bore Jiho's name and would continue his parents' work of studying alien life and promoting understanding between species. Scientists there were already making discoveries that would benefit all the races of the galaxy, turning the boy's death into something that created life and knowledge rather than just revenge. Throughout the galaxy, whenever human warships appeared in space, a strange silence fell over alien vessels. Not the silence of fear, exactly, but the quiet respect that comes from understanding a fundamental truth. Every alien commander knew the story of the human child whose death had changed everything. They understood that humanity's capacity for love and protection was matched only by their capacity for absolute destruction when that love was threatened. The lesson had been written in fire across the stars and paid for with innocent blood. But from that terrible price had come something unprecedented in galactic civilization. True peace based not on the strength of the powerful, but on the protection of the weak. The age of human weakness was over. The age of respectful peace had begun, watched over by the memory of one small boy who never got to see the stars he dreamed about, but whose death had made them safer for every child who came after.